Caine from the Amazing Digital Circus is dead and gone. But his life was a tragic one, and now we have to pick up the pieces of what's left. Today's theory was brought to you by Squarespace, but more about that in a bit. Hello Internet! Welcome to Film Theory, the show that just saw the subscribe button abstract. Maybe if we go click on it, we can calm it down. So now that we've gotten a chance to digest everything that's happened with the Amazing Digital Circus Episode 8, I wanted to sit down and have a proper look at what's happened, right? Like, did you hear that Episode 9 is gonna be twice as long as Episode 8? And they're actually releasing it in theaters? Yeah, Glitch teamed up with some theater chains throughout North America to release both Episode 8 and 9 together as the Amazing Digital Circus The Last Act. Tickets actually sold out like immediately, and I managed to snag some, so I'll be there in my Film Theory 10th anniversary hoodie available at theoryware.store, and expect a theory about that episode as soon as we can make one. And it's been such a hit that they're already adding more theaters in more countries. Now, in most situations, this would be an unequivocal win for both Glitch and independent animation. I mean, independent creators as a whole, really. Both this and Iron Lung are proving that there's real interest in creative ideas from anywhere, especially from indie artists. You did that and you should be proud. But this has also come with a big asterisk. A lot of the Digital Circus community are upset that this is releasing 2 weeks before the YouTube upload drops. So for a couple of weeks, there are going to be spoilers and pirated clips filmed in the theaters out in the wild before everyone is going to have a chance to see this finale. There are a lot of fans who either missed getting one of those limited tickets, live in rural areas that are nowhere near a participating theater, or can't afford to make a trip to the theaters for this event. They vocalized that frustration, and Glitch actually responded in a very long post about it. Honestly, this was probably the best thing they could have done in this situation. They say here that if this works and is successful, which it appears like it is, it's gonna be a game changer for everyone, not just for Glitch. There'll be a proven example that this sort of independent animation can be successful in theaters at a wide scale, and that opens doors. I mean, just look at what Markiplier and Iron Lung did. Sony took one look at that and greenlit a Bloodborne movie from Jacksepticeye. Do you know how difficult it is to get them to do anything with Bloodborne? But it took a lot of negotiations with theaters to even let them release the episode online this close to the theatrical release. At the same time, I really sympathize with all the fans who can't see it before the upload. If you're in that situation, your feelings are absolutely valid and there's no two ways about it. This sucks. But thankfully, there is something you can do about it. If you want to see this in theaters and none nearby are showing it, respectfully reach out to the chain and politely let them know that you want to. Doing this has already gotten theaters in more countries to carry the film, and they're adding dates all the way through the release of the episode online. If anything, that just makes this release even more of a win-win for everyone involved. Still, for those who won't get the chance, it's really on the community to rally here and be sure not to spoil anything until the full episode releases online. I mean, I know I'm gonna be keeping my mouth shut, and our theory isn't going to release until the Sunday after the episode is up for everybody to see. So if you're lucky enough to see this in theaters, please be kind and courteous to your fellow Digital Circus fans. Don't give out spoilers randomly, and if you have to talk about it, clearly mark it. Cool? Cool. All right, I didn't mean to talk about that for like 5 minutes, but it seemed like an important topic because, well, this has never happened before. But okay, we've spent more than enough time here on that. You know what the Digital Circus is, and we all know what happened in Episode 8, with Caine now being deleted and gone forever. But my friends, that is a tragedy because this is a tragic character, and I fear that whatever has been left behind now is going to be much, much worse for our cast of characters. So conjure up a computer and hack into the database, loyal theorists. Let's get right into it. So we see a lot in Episode 8, like a surprising amount of lore dropped here. For example, we actually get to see and hear a lot of characters for the first time. Scratch, Queenie, and a bunch of the other characters we've only seen on the doors of rooms. But of course, that can't last as we hard cut to Queenie being the last person to abstract and Kinger finding himself alone until Ragatha arrives, looking and sounding a lot like Pomni did when she first popped in.
What?
From here, we flash forward to the present. Caine goes on a bit of a power trip and reminds the castmates who's really in charge.
And since when were you in charge?
Leaving them feeling understandably defeated. We're also given an info dump about the origins of the circus. During the episode, Pomni puts a bucket on Kinger's head, dipping him into darkness so that he can think more clearly. Something we've talked about in previous theories. Once he grabs as many marbles as he can and regains some brain cells, Kinger explains that CNA wasn't just part of an adventure. It was a real software developer that he worked at, though not a game developer like we previously theorized.
No, we didn't make games. We were just developing artificial intelligence, specifically creative AI.
Basically, the human forms of Kinger and a bunch of the other original characters were software developers programming AI, and they created Caine. He was their first success.
Caine was our first semi-successful attempt at that.
Oh, my bad. Semi-success, though he was still a little bit wonky. Though if they really wanted to be successful here, there are way easier methods to do so. For example, they could have just made a great service, like the sponsor for today's theory, Squarespace. If you've managed to avoid them so far and don't know, Squarespace is an all-in-one website builder that can help you create beautiful websites all in one single place. And it can be for anything you want. Do you run a small business? Want a place to store all of your crazy ideas for adventures you have that you're gonna force your friends to go on? Well, Squarespace is gonna have you covered. They'll help you build a home for all of it, thanks to their incredibly customizable website design. For real, it has built-in services that help you with everything for your business, giving you what you need to offer services, get paid, schedule appointments, and even send out emails. I mean, you gotta let people know that they can't escape the digital circus after all. Plus, it's gonna be super easy to stand out thanks to all of Squarespace's cutting-edge design tools. Using their website builder, you can start with one of Squarespace's award-winning templates, and then switch them up with their drag-and-drop editing to get a fully custom website exactly how you want. You can even make it look like the circus if you want. Squarespace domains also means that you can easily find a name for your website all in one place with an all-inclusive price. You're not gonna be surprised by a bill, and each Squarespace domain has security and privacy tools, meaning that it's protected. Even Jax won't be able to get in there with his keys to anything. So if you want to start building your website today, go to squarespace.com for your free trial now. And when you're ready to launch, you can go to squarespace.com/filmtheory to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring today's theory, and let's head back into the amazing digital circus. But Kinger points to one of his colleagues as one of the leaders in the creation of Caine. We don't really get his human name, but his circus name was Scratch. Remember the dog-looking guy who was talking to Caine in that flashback? In episode 7, Caine says that Scratch was
The first abstraction.
So, okay, that's neat, but so what? What does this tell us about the story here, the world, and the lore? Well, this is where we get our best explanation for what's going on with the circus and why. See, Scratch was an interesting guy. Kinger called him a genius and said that he was great at thinking outside of the box.
His ideas were often so bizarre and abstract that the rest of the team had no idea how to work in his language.
But how was he like this?
Either due to pure brilliance or the tumor in his head.
Yeah. One of the folks who was helping create AI like Caine was dying. We previously theorized that Kinger helped create the circus perhaps to save his wife who may have been sick. And it looks like we were right about the broad strokes of that idea, but we just didn't identify the right character. See, I bet Scratch was the one who became obsessed with creating this sort of AI, creating a program that people could enter so they could save their brains in some way and have a digital life after death. Oh, and also, just before I forget, as the castmates are coming to grips with their new reality that there really isn't an escape and that they need to make the best of the lives that they have, something else that we called in a previous video, we also see Pomni get taken away for some weird solo adventure before she's brought back full of knives. Fun fact, but we see how this happens in a teaser Gooseworks released all the way back in 2023. Now, at first I wondered if this meant we should go back and look at all of the old teasers and ads to see if anything else was hidden in there, but Gooseworks has confirmed that most of the ads aren't canon, so we just gotta keep that in mind. Interestingly, during this lore dump, we also get an explanation for some of the stranger events in the series. You know how a lot of the characters have been able to to do some strange things throughout the run of the show. Stuff like Jack standing on the side of a falling truck, or Pomni suddenly being super good with guns, or Kinger healing Ragatha with a butterfly he created out of nothing. Well, that was because the castmates can create things in this world too.
We all technically have the ability to conjure.
They can tweak the code of the circus and add things just like Caine, and this has wide-reaching effects. For example, I bet that this is how Jax was able to get the keys for everyone's rooms when he shouldn't have. And it's also how Pomni encountered the exit door in episode 1. She conjured it because she so desperately wanted it. And using that, she's able to conjure it again so Kinger can get access to a computer to change Caine or to put him to sleep. That actually becomes the plan and the plot in this episode. The rest of the cast try to distract Caine as best they can until Kinger can do this, but, well, things don't go so well.
I'm gonna put you freaks in your place!
Not only that, but, well, Kinger accidentally deletes Caine.
Wait.
I think I accidentally killed Caine.
Yeah, while navigating this weird, archaic code, Kinger erases Caine from the circus and basically destroys the circus as we know it. Sadly and ironically, if you pause and zoom in on the code Kinger is trying to input here, he really didn't mean to kill Caine. You can see that the console is being incredibly difficult and unclear in its questions, and after Kinger hits yes on a prompt, he also desperately tries to undo it before Caine is erased. It's kind of sad, and even more so when you remember that Kinger created Caine, so he kind of murdered his own son. Oops, that really sucks. Even if he was kind of psychotic and tortured you and your wife and your friends and strangers and probably animals too at some point. Anyway, that's a lot of the smaller details I wanted to talk about, but as you can tell, they all lead to one place: Caine. So now that we've gotten a chance to digest everything with the Amazing Digital Circus episode 8, what's going on with Caine? Well, despite his death, and as the voice actor confirmed he is dead, this episode really gives us a wrap up on his story arcs, his thought process, and, well, the tragedy of his existence. Let's go through it. It's a bit, well, abstract, but this episode gives us a look at Caine's origins and tells us a lot about why he acts the way he does. Yeah, on top of Kinger explaining this a bit later in the episode,
He was one of my greatest achievements as a programmer.
You made Caine?
Partially, yes.
we literally see it happen. We open on a sort of low-tech looking scene with a red dot on a simple background. This is clearly supposed to represent Caine in his sort of infantile stage. It's baby Caine. Anyway, he's then fed several other red dots from off-screen and we see flashes of images, presents, and carnival attractions, and hot air balloons, and tents. A lot of circus imagery, basically. So this is Caine being programmed, right? And things seem to go well. He starts creating shapes. Simple, boring stuff, sure, but it's all working and clear. However, right after this, he's fed something else. Green data, including dinosaurs and candy and a restaurant and like a golf course? At first, I thought that this was a second party coming in to feed Caine this information, but Kinger's discussion later in the episode really made it seem like he was the main driving force here, so I guess this was just Caine doing other stuff. And just before we continue, but isn't it interesting that all of the pictures we see here are stuff that we see used in the circus somewhere during Caine's adventures? It's just a fun little detail, but wanted to point it out. Anyway, things don't seem to go exactly to plan. With all of this new information, something starts to conflict. The shapes this little Caine dot starts producing are now odd. They're jagged and jiggly. Something has gone wrong, but things aren't entirely falling apart either. Now, a third stream of information is sent in, this one blue, and this one includes shots of the CNA headquarters. And this just, well, it breaks the Caine dots. Everything it starts to create is just wrong now. Clearly, whatever was added here is just completely incompatible and is just corrupted little Caine dots AI. So the powers that be go and do the only thing that they really can here. They lock this little Caine AI in a box and move on. Might have just made more sense to delete it, but who am I to judge? I ain't got no degree in computer science. We then see a new AI pop up here, a blue dot. I'm gonna call this one Abel, unrelated to the NPC from episode 7, but just roll with me here, it'll make sense in a second. A fourth feed of information is sent in here represented by yellow data, and it results in an AI that makes things just fine, before the Caine AI breaks free and consumes the Abel AI. It then creates the digital circus as we know it. We previously talked about Caine being a stand-in for the biblical character who killed his brother Abel, and this is just bringing that moment full circle. Caine kills and consumes his little brother, and, well, something just breaks. Nothing is working right now, and worst of all, Caine seems to understand this, that he killed his little brother.
Maybe you're just genuinely bad at this.
Shut up! No, I fixed that!
On some level, Caine knows that he just wasn't working properly and, quote-unquote, fixed it, almost certainly by eating Abel. And just in case you need some extra proof here, we see Bubble reference this event later in the episode.
Defective Bubble!
Shut up!
Broken! Maybe you deserved to be abandoned. You really were the lesser of the two.
Bubble is straight up talking about what happened in this scene. I actually wondered for a bit if Bubble was somehow the other AI trying to break free and take control of the circus, but that isn't the case. Gooseworks confirmed on Tumblr that Bubble was deleted alongside Caine, so he was just like part of him somehow. I'll go out on a limb and suggest that maybe Bubble is somehow a remnant of the Abel AI within Caine, but it's more likely just a representation of Caine's own self-doubt. A sort of voice in your ear, devil in your shoulder situation, if you know what I mean. Anyway, I wanted to go over this section in detail because this is Caine's origins, and it tells us why he is the way he is. He was created by a human form of Kinger, and maybe contributed to by other employees of CNA, thus perhaps why all the different streams of info had different colors. One of them might have been from scratch, but regardless, Kinger and the others successfully made a creative AI. But then they seemed to poison it with images of that office setting. Hey, maybe that's commentary on your typical 9-to-5, huh? Or maybe Caine just really didn't like Kinger's desk. Oh, why do I say that this is Kinger's desk? Well, there's a framed image of a butterfly, and we know that Kinger likes these butterflies because of his wife. And there's a framed picture of what looks like a woman, likely said wife. There's also a chessboard here with a king and a queen, and also 3 smaller pieces. Does that mean that Kinger and Queenie have 3 kids? Would that explain why he's able to take on the role of group dad so easily? The real question here is then, who created this second AI? Who made Abel? Was it Kinger again? Or maybe Scratch? Can't say for sure, though Scratch does make sense to me, but I would put money on Queenie being the person who put in the data that made this Abel AI run beautifully. Why? Well, for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it makes sense thematically for Kinger and Queenie to work well together. They know each other intimately, so being able to code and create this new little AI life together would probably be easier, right? But secondly, and more importantly, we know that Kinger's wife loved bugs.
She was funny, creative, really into entomology.
And as we previously theorized, this probably means bugs as in computer coding, glitches and errors and stuff like that. So if she's good at working with or around those, it makes sense that the data she'd be putting into Abel wouldn't cause it to glitch out like Caine did. This also gives a little bit of extra color to Kinger trying to save Caine. After all, if he helped create Caine, they'd be sort of like father and son in some twisted way, right? Now, based on the fact that Caine wasn't exactly intended and that he broke out of confinement and basically consumed his little brother, you can imagine that he has some insecurities about that. I mean, that's what the clip of Bubble I pulled earlier was preying on. But episode 8 gives us probably the best look into Caine's mentality here during the rest of the conversation with Bubble, and honestly, it's kind of sad. If there's one thing that becomes clear in this episode, it's that Caine does genuinely care about the work he's making, and he wants people to like it, and by extension, to like him. For example, he says,
Surely they don't want to actually leave me, right?
He says that he slaves over the adventures. He steps out of his comfort zone to appeal to them, but he feels like that isn't enough. At his core, Caine is someone who wants people to like him, to enjoy his work, and to adore him because of that. He's like a tortured artist in a way. This also includes how he's built out the circus here, including the forms each of the characters have taken. Yeah, as Caine explains,
I made a program that creates a body perfectly encapsulating their mind files, and they they hate those too!
So, all of our previous observations and theories about the circus bodies of these characters matching up with their personalities and representing their insecurities was 100% right on the money. But more important than that, this line gives us a real insight into Caine's biggest character flaw. Despite wanting to make the castmates happy, he just doesn't understand exactly how to do it. I mean, in a way, he almost takes things very literally, or very much at face value, right? Like using these bodies and mind files as an example. It's a very logical way to think, to assume that everyone would want a body that lines up with what's going on in their brains. But while that may be the case for some folks, for many others, they look at themselves in the mirror and don't like what they see. They'll find flaws and insecurities about even the smallest things, even if nobody else would notice. And that's not even talking about the mental health angle here, right? Like, even if you're satisfied with your body, if you're struggling with mental health, having that literally personified in a new body probably isn't going to make you feel good. And for whatever reason, probably because my guy is a computer program, Caine just cannot understand it. But his biggest problem, however, is that Caine will not, or literally cannot, separate the real from the imaginary. He says,
I don't understand, Bubble. They want an exit, they want answers, they want something real. I give them an adventure that covers all of that, and they still hate it?
He believes that the adventures should be enough. He cannot comprehend that there's a world outside of the circus. And I mean, part of that is understandable. He was created here. This is all he has ever known, and everything outside of the circus he has ever seen has just been the void. And while this is no excuse to continue his torture, it does make sense, doesn't it? Despite being at least a semi-sentient AI, maybe even fully on-sentient, Caine is still a computer program. You can feed him information about the world all day and night, but that doesn't mean he'll actually understand it. And honestly, that's tragic. It's an existence that is hollow and sad and makes Caine a very sympathetic character. Kind of like what we talked about in our previous theory. It also makes it ironic that some of the AI characters he did create, like Gummy Goo, do seem to understand that there's something beyond the circus and its adventures. But, well, aren't all children supposed to surpass their parents? Now, if Caine were just like a normal person and not a masochistic AI program, I'd just recommend he go get some therapy about this. But, well, he deals with it a little differently. He starts to glitch out. He breaks his programming and basically attacks Bubble and the rest of the cast. He has a whole freaking musical number about it. He pushes the people he needs away and hurts them, and deep down, it's terrible. It's awful, but it's understandable. Now, don't get me wrong. What he's doing here to the cast, forcing them to go on adventures and torturing them, that is not and will never be okay. Underneath it all, the cartoony aesthetic and the video game logic and the amped up stakes, because none of this is quote unquote real, Caine is just like a thoroughly misunderstood child who doesn't know how to connect to people. He's refocused his trauma into something he thinks is productive, but he's not actually confronting his problems head on. He's insecure.
Maybe you're just genuinely bad at this.
And he just does not have the tools or the friends and family in his life to deal with it. He's not doing the work he needs to do to become a better person, and as a result, he can't take valid criticism and lashes out at the people supposedly closest to him. And taking that trauma and turning it into abuse is ultimately Caine's undoing, as the people he's now abusing try to stop him and accidentally destroy him as a result. Nobody really wanted this, and, well, it's just an incredible representation of generational trauma, and I love how this landed in the show. Now, a lot of this likely happened because of Caine's limited understanding of the world, but I also have to wonder if that his confined way of thinking has led Caine, and therefore the rest of the cast, to misunderstand one of the parts of this show that has been explored the least: abstraction. See, up until this point, everyone has seen abstraction as a sort of ending, and understandably so. These characters lose everything about themselves and turn into giant monsters. And what Gooseworks has said elsewhere online is pretty clear that this isn't something that you should want to happen to you. But at the same time, I can't help but draw some connections here. Remember, Scratch was the first person to abstract.
Scratch, the first abstraction?
Because Caine messed with Scratch's files.
I may have the ability to add temporary modifiers to make adventures more interesting, but that's it. If I did anything more, trust me, it would not end well.
And how did Kinger describe Scratch's way of thinking?
His ideas were often so bizarre and abstract that the rest of the team had no idea how to work in his language.
Bizarre and abstract. That is a very specific choice of words, especially for this series. And that out-of-the-box thinking was a possibility because of
The tumor in his head.
So if we know that these versions of the characters in the circus seem to be copies of their brains based on their mind files, Scratch has a tumor in his mind, and he abstracted because Caine was messing with his brain? Well, was Caine trying to fix Scratch's mind files to tweak it and remove the tumor? But in doing so, in removing that tumor, that healing caused the abstraction? We've talked a lot about the biblical connections in this series, and one of the things that kept coming back was the concept of biblically accurate angels. The representations of angels that have a bunch of eyes all over them. We actually connected that to the abstracted cast members already, since they were also covered in eyes. But taking that one step further, does that mean that maybe abstraction is more like an ascension? These characters giving up everything about themselves, yes, but transcending into a true, data state? I'm not sure, I'm just spitballing here, but between all of the new information we learned in this episode, all of the biblical connections, and threads like Queenie's abstracted form being calmed by darkness, I don't know, it just feels like something is there, right? Now, at this point, believe it or not, but I still had more to say about this episode and the situations it brought up. The way episode 8 ended just had so many conversations left to pull on, including one about another main character here. But this theory is already getting super long, so subscribe if you want to see what that video is going to be in the future. I'm hoping to get it up by next week. But until then, remember that it's all just a theory. A film theory. And cut. Up next on Film Theory. You are trapped in the Amazing Digital Circus.